Welcome to this video. My name is Eva, and in this video I talk about this phenomena, which is that women are attracted to bad boys or bad men, or many women are attracted to that type of men, and it's a really interesting concept. And I think like other men, they might be wondering like why do are attracted to that type of man, even because for men they see it a little bit more clearly, and so for them it makes no sense. So I want to shed some light on this topic. So common characteristics of this bad boy, bad guy is like there's a range, so everyone is a little bit different, of course, but some common characteristics, usually they tend to be more dominant, quote unquote. So they don't like that type of man. They don't like to make compromise. They say, hey, I pick you up at 7, and then they pick you up at 7, even if you maybe want to be picked up at a different time or something like that. So very dominant in a way. Also very often like riding a motorbike or doing other types of more dangerous activities. Usually they go to the gym, so more muscular. Also they have that type of mysterious vibe, so which I know now is just avoidance. So they have problems communicating their needs, they have problems communicating about their feelings. If they don't like something, instead of communicating that issue, they just tend to disappear in a way, like retreat, go away. And that type of behavior obviously is very like hot cold behavior, and it can make us addicted. So and this type of guy, they're usually very popular with women, and why that happens I will explain now. So there are different reasons for it. I think the first one is just that a lot of women with daddy issues are attracted to that man just because maybe they had a dad who was also similar. So maybe they had a dad who was narcissistic, and so they could kind of see the dynamic that happened between their dad and their mom. Maybe the mom more submissive, the dad very dominant, and that's kind of the relationship that they got to witness as children and growing up. And so that's how they feel comfortable with that dynamic. And so when they now meet a guy that is also more dominant or maybe more avoidant, that's just, it feels a little bit like home. It's familiar. They already know how to behave. So for example, that man is very dominant, so they can be very submissive because that's just what they knew growing up, even though it's not very functional, because a healthy relationship is really two equal partners making compromises, communicating about them. But so for many women who have those type of daddy issues, who have not gone to therapy, it's just this familiarity and the subconscious patterns of, okay, subconsciously that's what I witnessed, so from my parents, so that's what feels safe to me. So when I meet a guy who is that type of mysterious or very dominant, or who doesn't really communicate, that's still what I'm attracted to. And that's just the kind of the law of familiarity in a way. And there's also a different law that comes into play with that situation, is the law of repetition. So if you, for example, had a dad who was unavailable, who was not really interested in you that much, or who was narcissistic, was very dominant, was very selfish in a way, or was that type of bad boy, bad man behavior, you might as a child thought to yourself, oh, I really wanted to change my dad, like make him proud, see me for who I am. But of course it never really worked out. So now you try to replicate that. And so you meet a guy who's similar to your dad in some characteristics, like for example also narcissistic, not available, and then you try with that other guy to make him see you, because it's just how the subconscious works for a lot of people, or for most people, is that you want to, what didn't work out in your childhood, now you want to kind of make it work in your adulthood. But of course it usually never works, because that bad guy, usually if they don't go to therapy, and if they don't want to go to therapy and they don't want to change, there's no chance that they will change. So you cannot make people change. They have to realize it for themselves, and they have to go to therapy, etc., etc. So if you have that type of trauma or daddy issues, and you are attracted to that type of man who's unavailable, who doesn't treat you right, who's very dominant, I would highly recommend therapy without any judgment. But it's so helpful to become conscious about all of those things that are going on, and it's also a very painful process as well. Like it's very often also has to do with childhood trauma, so it's a really painful process. So I would highly recommend to get professional help for that, so that you can actually like unlearn, because like unlearn a lot of behaviors and relearn healthier behaviors as well. So for example, if your dad was very dominant or narcissistic, you also as a child, usually for children, we look up to our parents and we look up to our dad and we feel like, wow, this is our hero. And so in this therapy process, if you want to heal your daddy issues, really have to learn, okay, that behavior from my dad was not okay and it was not healthy, so I choose other different kind of behavior. So it's really a journey of healing also. So but this could also be an explanation why some women are just attracted to guys who don't treat them well, or who are who are very dominant, who don't listen to them, who don't make compromises. So also it can happen because you have low self-esteem, which is often a consequence of childhood trauma. So if you have very low self-esteem, you don't have that agency for yourself, and you just want to please, you just want to be there for someone else. So I would also highly recommend, if you notice that you have low self-esteem, to go to a therapist and talk about that, so that you can have healthier self-esteem and you can choose guys that actually care for you. Another thing why women are attracted to this type of guy, and it happens very often also to women that are quote unquote the nice girl in a way, is that it's just like that opposites attract. So if you have, for example, this quote unquote nice girl, so just a woman who tries her best, but obviously like life is weird and hard sometimes, so tries her best but then fails, or tries to be good, tries to do good, and it sometimes doesn't work out, and then they meet kind of this bad guy who just doesn't care at all about others, or seems to not care at all about others. It's kind of this huge attraction, because you have two very opposite people, and two very opposite people very often, and it gives this huge attraction. And that's also something that I've learned, is that huge attraction does not mean healthy relationship, but healthy relationship usually comes more from being compatible, and having a little bit less attraction, like still attraction, but not as like this huge firework that you have with someone who's your total opposite. So that can also be why some women are attracted to that bad guy, or to that bad man in a way. And also because some women, they might desire that dominance, because I think for women in our society, which is still, at least in Germany, very patriotic, so women have to work sometimes twice as hard to get the same recognition. Sometimes men belittle women, so it's very exhausting for a lot of women. And even if you are as smart as a man, sometimes still, or often, the man will get more recognition or more salary, etc. And I think many women have that type of anger inside of themselves, and they just want to be just be like this, like they want to have more dominance, so they crave that, and they want to have that recognition. So if they meet a guy like this bad boy who's very strong, very big, very mysterious, doesn't care at all, and women just fall for him, they feel like, okay, I want to be like this guy, I want to have that type of dominance. And also what can happen is that many women have suppressed anger because, for example, of society, they try their best, they fall down, misogyny, and so on and so on. And so if they meet a guy who's like this bad boy who also expresses that anger in a way, they can feel like, okay, I cannot express it, but if I am with that bad guy, maybe like this bad guy, they can also influence me. So it's in a way of, you're sick of, if you're this good girl or type of this woman, sometimes you're just sick of maybe your own life, your own situation. So it's also a way to want to escape from yourself into a person that is completely different to you. And so that can also be a reason that you have that suppressed anger, or that request desire for dominance, and you think, okay, if I'm with this guy, I can become like this guy in a way, and it can kind of rub off on me. So that can also be a reason. But I think very important, like being with such a guy, it's never worth it. Like, because in the end, this bad type of behavior, the really best thing that can happen is that they just ghost you, and then you have a little bit low self-esteem. But if you go in a relationship with that type of bad guy behavior, who is also tends to be more narcissistic, it can really like have like you can really have a bad relationship, and it can really affect you in a lot of negative ways, because if you're caught in that pattern of trying to please a man who you cannot please him because he's maybe narcissistic, very egoistical, and doesn't really think about you, doesn't make compromises, a relationship is really, really exhausting, and it can leave you shattered. So that's why it's so recommendable to not be with such a type of guy. Let it be, if it's kind of this attraction, let it be a fantasy. Maybe you want to read books where there's this bad guy in the books, and you can fantasize about that, but in real life it's just not really positive for you, and it's not really worth it. So it's really important to differentiate between like attraction and fantasy, and like real life and compatibility. And if you have, for example, that desire for like dominance, and this that you think, okay, maybe if I'm with this dominant man, I can also be a little bit like him. You can also read like leadership books, you can reframe your mindset, you can, in therapy there's cognitive behavioral therapy where you can reframe a lot of those things. Or you can learn how to set boundaries. For example, if you're resentful that you give so much and you don't get enough back, so it feels like you want to just take a break from your own life, you can also learn how to set boundaries and how to say no and how to be more assertive. And if you get that power within yourself to learn how to set boundaries, be more assertive, that's automatically when it can happen that you lose attraction to that bad type of man, or bad man in a way, bad boy behavior, because you can cultivate that within yourself to set boundaries or that type of things. Yeah, what also can happen is just adrenaline, because if you're with this bad boy, quote unquote, it can also, yeah, it can seem like an adventure because it's hot and cold. You get very addicted to that type of man, especially if you have not gone to therapy yet and you have unhealed emotional wounds. So you can get very addicted to that type of man, and it can feel like taking drugs basically. So this huge ups, then huge down, then huge ups, then huge down. And especially if you, for example, are in a place where you feel you're bored of your life, and then you see this type of bad boy behavior and you got addicted to it, it seems like an escape also in a way. And that's when it's also important to go to therapy and learn like healthy ways to have more excitement in your life. So maybe you want to go like to sexy dance classes, or you want to take a hobby that allows you to have more adrenaline, or you want to travel more just to make your life more interesting. Because in the end, the reality of being with such a bad boy, I mean, there's a spectrum as well, but in the bad cases, a relationship can really damage your self-esteem a lot, and it's not worth it. And another reason also why many women are attracted to that bad boy behavior, or also that kind of dominant narcissistic type of behavior, is just, if you look back like thousands of years ago, or maybe even millions of years ago, like women really needed to have this strong dominant man, because the strong dominant man was able to survive. So they could hunt, or they could like make the tents and everything, and that's kind of what women were attracted to, because it guaranteed them survival in a way. But it's really important to understand that times have changed. So now what we value now in a society, and what is now important for a healthy relationship, is completely different. Like now what's important is to be able to communicate, to be able to make compromises, to be able to be vulnerable. And those type of things are super, super important now. And I think it's really important for you to realize that just because someone is like very hot, it does not make them a very good partner. So so these were some of the things. Maybe to sum it up, I think many women are attracted to this bad boy for a lot of different reasons. Let it be daddy issues, unhealed trauma, just our DNA, or just that we are bored with our life, or we crave that dominance within ourselves. We crave we crave kind of to escape ourselves in a way. And I think what's really important is to go to therapy to heal all of those different types of things, so that we can actually attract a man that is healthy. And what's really important is also to learn about what is healthy masculinity and what is unhealthy masculinity, because maybe if we grew up also with a more dominant father, we learned that kind of masculinity means dominance, or maybe also narcissism, when in reality healthy dominance or healthy masculinity means more communication, healthy dominance also in a way. And it's really important to differentiate what is healthy masculinity, what is unhealthy masculinity, and not to confuse those two things. And that's also something that we can learn in therapy. So yeah, because in the end what we need is not just very good like sex, but very good relationships. So it's not worth it to be happy for like maybe if you meet that bad boy and you have a good time, but it's maybe one day and then the other 6 days you're kind of miserable because he ghosts you. It's not worth it. It's much better to be with a better partner for you, who's healthy all the time, where you feel good all the time. That's much better. And how we can get there for most of us is to go to therapy. And also what is really important, because I feel like people judge women so much, and they say like, oh, you're so stupid for being attracted to this bad boy or something like that. And I really hate it, because the same with daddy issues as well. Like people ridicule women or say like, oh, you got daddy issues, but in reality like it's really women who have suffered trauma from maybe their parents. And it's really a much more sad, much more important topic, and not something to be ridiculed or made fun of or judged. It's really something to explore with compassion and say, why are you attracted to that man? And like, yeah, and do you know what is healthy masculinity? Do you know what is unhealthy masculinity? Do you know what is a healthy relationship? And I think having that compassionate and kind of approach is much more beneficial. And because in the end we deserve healthy relationships. And this bad boy, in most of the cases, I mean there's always exceptions, but in most of the cases it's really not sustainable. So it's much better to be with a guy who is kind to you, who loves you. And it's really important, even if you're attracted to a certain type of man, attraction doesn't mean love, and attraction doesn't mean that you need to follow your emotions. Like, first follow your logic, figure out, is that guy actually a good fit for you, or is he not a good fit for you? And if he's not a good fit for you, then attraction doesn't matter. So this was the video for today. If you have any more comments, write them down in the comment section. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel. If you had any experience with it, write it also down in the comment section. Subscribe to my channel, check out the description box if I offer something, and see you in my next video.